latter half of November 2023 saw David and Frank being commissioned by Ashford Common Baptist Church and the South India Children's Education and Welfare Trust to visit Bangalore and other areas. We flew by Etihad to Bangalore via Abu Dhabi, with the flights lasting around 11 hours. We arrived in the early hours of the morning and were greeted by Pastor Timothy and friends at our very comfortable hotel, where we were billeted in good-sized rooms. Later that day, it was great to be back in Timothy's home, where we met Kevin, Sudha and Harakna, who looked after our meals and general well-being. We were welcomed with a gorgeous cake. There were 2 candles, which I guess was one for David and one for Frank. It's always great to enjoy Indian cuisine, and you can see us here enjoying our first meal. Breakfast and some other meals were taken at the hotel, where we were sometimes joined by our little furry friend. The first of our adventures was to drive to the partnership school, situated in a short, narrow road. David was on familiar territory, but this was Frank's first experience of India. The children were waiting for our arrival and seated calmly on the floor. David remembers the cramped conditions that the children had many years ago, and it's good to see the results of the teachers' efforts, enabling the children to learn in a calmer school environment. The lad was reciting Bible verses he had learnt, although the school teaches a broad curriculum to children who can't afford to attend a state school. David told a Bible story, and the children then coloured in some pictures to help them remember it. We also took some cut-out figures which the children will colour in and write their names on to show that they're part of a big family. Eileen had sent some teddy bears, which were gratefully received by the children, along with their lunch, before it was time for a group photo and for us to return to our hotel. The church was holding a 60-day prayer and fasting season, which ended shortly after we were there. Prayer meetings and Bible studies were well attended and notable for the joy expressed during worship, not only by the adults, but also by the children. One ladies' meeting was in the late morning, and those present sat down and ate together, very New Testament in style. I do hope this young lad didn't miss out on his lunch. One of the highlights of the visit was the service when 9 new Christians expressed their decision to follow Christ through believers' baptism. It is especially poignant when we consider the cost and sometimes the danger of deciding to become a Christian. Prayer was offered for each to be filled with the Holy Spirit and for specific spiritual gifts to be given by him. But often people would request other prayers for God to touch their lives in other ways. Sunday is always a great occasion, with 2 well-attended main services of around 2¼ hours each. These are often led by Kevin and aided by a mixed choir of around a dozen. David was invited to share a message, with Timothy translating into Tamil, with images and texts displayed on screens for all to see. After the main services, the young people gathered for their own English language service. It was great to see the number of young people present and eager to learn. We're very grateful to Venkatesh for driving us many kilometres around Bangalore, and to the many hosts for the cell meetings we went to, a couple taking around 2½ hours each to reach. Wherever we went, there was a warm Christian atmosphere from young and old alike, many of whom are well-known brothers and sisters. Whilst most of the songs are sung in Tamil, we were treated to a more familiar song which expressed thanks for all the blessings God gives.
My soul, oh my soul, I worship your holy name. Sing
This trip was a combination of church and charity, with the church activities all based in Bangalore, while the charity supports other charities throughout South India. The crossover point was a very pleasant lunch with David's good friends Sahib and Rita, who minister through Tribal Transformations India. Our charity, recount, have recently awarded a grant for children in a remote village school. We were grateful to the president of DANE, the Development Association for Needy Elevation, which operates in another remote village, for coming a long way to see us in Bangalore. recount have been pleased to supply laptops to enable the village children to learn some IT skills, which are so important for them in this IT-centric country. We've helped other charities in similar ways. Another charity we have supported is abbreviated to CKB, and we welcomed Vijaya and Mohammed as they came to see us in Bangalore. Whilst Frank remained in Bangalore, David and Timothy travelled with them to their base in Anantapur, a 3.5 hours drive away, plus a little time for breakfast on the way. On arriving, David received a very warm Indian welcome. To see foodstuffs purchased through a grant for education and nutrition to teenage girls of sick families. This was distributed in the presence of local dignitaries, in large, gratefully received sacks. Some of the children sang or danced for us before we left for lunch. Unfortunately, Davy's lunch was administered through an IV drip in a local hospital, delaying our return to Bangalore. The following day, Frank valiantly travelled alone to visit two of the charities that we support, BAS and SWORD. The first port of call was to a slum in Dasaripalam in the Guntur district, where Joseph Anthony introduced Frank to the school for the children operated by BAS. recount have been pleased to support the children here. There are around 900 families living in the slum, and about 120 children a day come to school, are grouped into 8 classes. We've provided computers and related equipment to enhance the slum-dwelling children's prospects. As always, it was a treat to be entertained by some of the children. It was then on to Mamari Orphanage, which is a children's home for girls run by BAS in Gopalapuram. We funded a bore well to give fresh drinking water and irrigation for a vegetable garden, which no doubt provided some of the ingredients for a tasty dinner with the girls. Before leaving for the onward journey to Bapatla to meet SWORD, where it appeared to be raining petals. SWORD, the Social Organisation for Rural Development, to give it its full name, are active in a number of ways, and Frank was asked to help distribute food supplies to a community of lepers. It was then off with John McCarthy and family to Bardapur village to visit a school which we have supported, and which is in need of further help with a bore well, which would benefit young and old alike. While with SWORD, Frank was able to inspect a computing facility we have provided in the orphanage run by the family. This is open to other children in nearby villages, but Frank brushed up on his own computer skills. Lunch followed, with Frank helping to serve the children. You may have noticed the hat in many of the pictures, and it was well used to entertain the children, with them all wanting to wear it. recount aims to provide help in many ways, and we received a deputation from a young lady who had gained a gold medal in a local cycling competition. At the time of recording this video, we are considering a grant for her physical education school to enable them to purchase a high-performance bicycle. And so we came to our final day as we were reunited at Bangalore Airport prior to flying home. India is a fascinating place with many cultural landmarks and interesting streets by day and night. This army vehicle is marked as the school bus, but we presume it's for trainee soldiers, whereas this auto is a more common mode of transport, now with the aid of sat-nav directions. We spent the last few hours at the ancient Devanahalli fort with its elaborate shrines and monkeys, before departing for the new Terminal 2 at Bangalore Kempegowda Airport for our return journey home. It's a good job one of us stayed awake for our final walk through the terminal to the waiting aircraft. Well, Frank and I are out driving around collecting our money, which we can pass on to the different charities that we work with. When we first spoke, Frank, it was along the lines of what difference would going to India make for you?
Very difficult to answer that precisely, David, but we've just come out of a shop where I have been collecting money, and I've also now been in India and seen the results of what our collection is going to, and it's been a very rewarding experience. I have been very much uplifted by it. I was always very happy to do the collecting anyway, but I am now collecting on a new and higher plane. Thank you.
I really appreciate all that you're doing with us. Would you want to go back?
Oh, certainly I'd go back. You were a little bit indisposed towards the end of the visit, and you asked me to do a couple on my own, which I approached with some trepidation, but I fell into that task very easily, very much enjoyed doing it. In the words of a famous Frank Sinatra song, I did it my way. But I think it was all enjoyed by me and by those people I spoke to.
Well, that's super. Thanks, Frank.